Thomas Edward Dell had worked as a software engineer at companies including Apple and Netscape before going independent. In 1996, he wrote a program to scan for available single-word domain names matching actual dictionary entries. Rotten was unclaimed, so he registered it under his small company Soylent Communications. By his own account, the site started as little more than an excuse to justify spending money on a domain he had no real plan for. A casual beginning that nobody could have predicted would go anywhere at all. The timing mattered. In 1996, Congress had passed the Communications Decency Act, intended to restrict explicit material online. The law triggered immediate legal challenges and public debate about where free speech ended in digital spaces. Dell positioned Rotten.com directly inside that debate, framing it as a defense of unrestricted access to information, medical texts, historical documentation, photographic records of real events. Whether that framing was entirely sincere or not, it gave the site a clear ideological identity from the very start. The design was exactly what you would expect from 1996. Simple, bare, and nothing fancy. Each link had a single line of text next to it, written so vaguely that you had almost no idea what you were actually about to click on. The only real visual on the page was the logo, an old image of death taken from a French manuscript painted in the 1400s, which was a strange choice for a website, but somehow fit the whole thing perfectly. Almost everything on the site was sent in by regular people through email. Dell and his small team rarely uploaded anything themselves. The submissions were claimed to be real, but that was not always true. In one documented case, an image sent in as a road accident was later flagged by the developers themselves as probably being something completely different. They noted it, left it up anyway, and that became the general approach for the entire life of the site. The range of content on the site was wide. Photographs and footage from crash sites, crime scenes, war zones, and medical examinations all lived in the same place. Some of the material was sourced directly from coroners and forensic departments across multiple countries, and anyone could access all of it. No account needed, no barrier of any kind, which at the time was almost unheard of for content like this. Two events in the site's early years brought in enormous amounts of traffic. The first was the death of Princess Diana in Paris in August 1997. Rotten.com received a photograph claiming to show recovery efforts at the scene, and even though the image was later confirmed to be fake, Dell published it anyway because the public interest was too large to ignore. It brought a huge wave of visitors to the site and made one thing very clear about how Dell operated. Being real was nice, but it was never the main requirement. The second came after the September 11th attacks in 2001. Rotten.com was one of the first places to publish photographs of people falling from the World Trade Center, posted under the title Swan Dive. Most major news outlets had chosen not to run these images, which meant that for a large number of people, Rotten.com was the only place on the internet where they could actually find them. At its peak during this period, the site was pulling in around 200,000 visitors every single day. All that traffic gave Dell the confidence to start building around the main site. In late 1999, he launched a sister site called The Daily Rotten, which published news stories centered around crime, conflict, and everything society generally tries to look away from. Then in 2000, he added a commentary section called The Gaping Maw, where a cartoonist named Tristan Farnon wrote most of the articles under the name Spigot. If the main site just showed you things without any explanation, the Gaping Maw actually talked about them, and that combination ended up pulling in a wider audience and giving the whole operation a lot more legitimacy than it had before. In mid-2002, Soylent Communications launched something completely different, called NNDB, the Notable Names Database. It was a searchable archive where you could look up thousands of well-known people, politicians, athletes, criminals, and see their background and connections to other people. It had nothing to do with the shock content the main site was known for. It was just a straightforward reference tool, and it kept getting updated long after Rotten itself had started to fade. One of the stranger stories connected to the site involves a project called Bonsai Kitten. It was created in December 2000 by an MIT graduate student as a joke, presenting itself as a service that would seal young cats inside glass bottles and let them grow until their bones took the shape of the container. It was completely made up, but it looked real enough that people genuinely believed it, and the reaction was immediate. Animal rights groups went public with their outrage, and the FBI opened an investigation within 2 months of the site launching. After 11 different hosting servers dropped it one after another, Soylent Communications stepped in and took it over. The original creator later admitted that being associated with Rotten brought attention to both sides that neither would have had otherwise. In November 2003, Soylent Communications launched the Rotten Dead Pool, a community game where participants picked 10 public figures they thought would die within the next 12 months and earned a point for each one they got right. There were rules to keep it fair. You could not pick someone who was already visibly on their way out, anyone sitting on death row, or anyone you had some kind of personal connection to. It ran as an active online community for several years. In June 2005, Attorney General Alberto Gonzales ordered the removal of several sections of the site. The issue was a federal law requiring any platform hosting adult content to keep records, proving that every person depicted was of legal age. For a site that was built entirely on anonymous email submissions with no registration or verification of any kind, that was simply never going to be possible. The gaping maw was taken down completely, its front page replaced with a message criticizing the law under a banner that read, "Censored by U.S. government." It came back in January 2006 with most of its content restored, though heavily edited. By the late 2000s, the internet had changed in ways that were working against everything Rotten was built on. Social media and video platforms were pulling people toward feeds that updated constantly and kept them engaged for hours at a time. Rotten was still a static page that someone had to manually update, and that model simply could not compete anymore. Updates started slowing down around 2009, and the last real update to the site was recorded in February 2012. The site stayed online for a few more years, even after updates stopped completely. According to Dell, it finally went offline in October 2017, not because of any legal pressure or outside interference, but simply because the server hardware was too old to keep running, and he chose not to replace it. The front page was last captured by the Wayback Machine in February 2018. The domain is still registered and paid up until 2033, but the site itself is gone, and Dell never rebuilt it. Rotten.com ran for roughly 16 years, built by one person, operated by a small team, free to access, and never supported by advertising. It existed during a very specific moment in internet history, before the big platforms existed and before anyone had really figured out how to regulate online content. Inside that window, it became the single largest collection of material that you simply could not find anywhere else in one place. It shaped conversations about content moderation and free speech online that are still happening today. The domain still exists, the content does not.